afterwards, but it'll be a good time. We're really looking forward to having you. Can I just talk? I just want to do a bit of a detour. Can I do that? I know these last 3 years have been crazy, man. More and more I speak to people around the city, in our nation, actually around the world. The more conversations I'm having with people, the more I realize how we have been shaken and rocked and blown and knocked down. I'll get knocked down again, but I'll get back up again. Isn't there a song like that? But I feel the effect of that. We have felt it in our own lives. We've seen it in our family. We've seen it in our church community. We see it outside, all over the place. It's just like hectic stuff going on. And as I've been thinking about what God is wanting for us moving forward, and what He wants for you as an individual, one thing stands out for me. Only one thing: that we would have a healthy, deep, loving relationship with Jesus. All the rest for me is peripheral. And for me, that's the keyest thing that we can do. I think out of that place, life comes and flows. That's what we preach. That's what we believe in. But I just want to make you aware that we see this. And so what we want to do is we want to invite you into a journey next year with us. We're doing a little series called the Good and Beautiful series. It's written by an amazing man, and we're going to be having our first community group meeting this afternoon or later on, and it's the beginning of a journey. And we're going to be doing the Good and Beautiful series through our communities. And I was chatting to Matt about this, and I thought, why don't we just open this up? If you feel like, one, you can grow deeper in your relationship with Jesus. Two, you could grow with other people. Then this is a journey we want you to come on with us. We're all in here. That's what we're going to focus on. How we can be fruitful Jesus followers at every level of our lives. And so if you feel like you could grab 2, 3, 4, 5 people here in this space, maybe even a friend of yours outside of this space, and go, why don't I host a group of people and we'll go on this journey together. It's going to be a 6-month journey in our communities midweek. We would love you to be a part of that. So if you're keen, speak to Matt. And even if you're keen, come to the community. It is the 30th today, hey? Come to the community meeting afterwards. Can they do that? Is that cool? Even if you want, what does that mean? Because some of you are new Christian going, I'm in, I want to do that. And do I have to be qualified? No, just come along and hear our hearts. That's what we want to do. We want to grow in our relationship with Jesus. And you know, the best way to grow is together, without a doubt. I need you. I need you to help me become what God designed or destined me to become. Without you, I'll become a proper idiot. True story. Okay, enough confession this morning. Lead Like Jesus is a little series that I'm plonking in near the end of this year. And I want to go into our third session that I'm doing. I want to refer to someone that I have great respect for. In her book, Dare to Lead, Brené Brown says this: leadership is not about titles or corner offices. It's about the willingness to step up and put yourself out there and lean into courage. Shall I read that again? Leadership is not about titles or corner offices. Wow, somewhere along the line, the church didn't read this book. Because somewhere along the line, the church believed throughout the ages that leadership is about titles and the corner office. Shame on us. And Brené Brown is not a Jesus follower. It's about the willingness to step up and put yourself out there and lean into courage. Daring leadership, she says, is ultimately about serving other people, not ourselves. That's why we choose courage. Dare to lead requires us to be brave. And to lead like Jesus not only means that we must live like Jesus, but we need to dare to believe what Jesus tells us about leadership in our lives. It's a crucial aspect for me. We need to hear what he has to say about what it means to lead. the way he led is our example. And if we want to lead like Jesus, it's going to require a lot of courage. And we're going to have to make the choice to be brave. And I'll tell you why. Because leading like Jesus is upstream. It's against the grain. It's counterculture. There's nothing like it. The first shall be last, the least shall be the greatest, and a king becomes a slave to all. That's Jesus on leadership. And every single thing that I've read about Jesus, on what he says about leadership, lands in exactly the same place. One word: serve. Serve. Be servant leaders. That's exactly how Jesus led. And you know where it led him. It led him to the cross. It's in his style of leadership that I believe Jesus hints on 3 dares. It's like he's daring us to lead like me. He said, I dare you to lead like me. It is revolutionary. You'll turn the world upside down. Now, I know most of you are marketplace, that's the big word they're using nowadays, or commercial or secular leaders. I know that. And I'm aware of that. And I know when I mention what I've just mentioned, it causes a conflict in your mind because you go, you don't understand the world that I'm in, the environment that I'm in. I know I don't. But I do know what Jesus said. And what he said applies to our lives. If we dare to lead like him, what could happen? What could happen? So the first dare is dare to be different. If you're going to lead like Jesus, dare to be different. If your Bibles, turn with me to Matthew 20, 24 to 28. I'm going to read from the New Living Translation. I love the way they do this. I'm going to read it so you can follow me or you can listen. Then the 10 other disciples heard what James and John had asked, and they were indignant. So James and John had gone behind the other 10 disciples back and said, hey, listen, please, Jesus, pick me. I mean, we're really nice guys. Please, can we be sit really close to you? Can we have the top dog job? Don't worry about the other guys. We're the people you should choose. We'll make great leaders. Then the other guys heard what they had done, and they were properly upset. But Jesus called them all together, and he said, you know that the rulers of this world lord over people, and the officials flaunt their authority over those who are under them. But among you, it will be different. I dare you to be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. So he's splashing back to James and John. He's eyeing them out and he's going, if you want to be the leader of these guys, then you need to follow me and be their servant. And I want to tell you where my leadership is leading me right now. It's leading me to the cross. And whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. A choice. I want to be first among you, but I want to be known not as the first greatest leader. I want to be known as the first slave among us. You're going, I don't know if I could do that. You know, when Paul wrote his letters, he said, Paul, a slave to Jesus Christ. He got it. Hundreds and thousands, millions of leaders throughout the ages have got it. Why can't we in this modern world that we live in? And even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. Be different. That's the first dare. Be different. Servant leadership is different. It feels different. It looks different. It smells different. Everything about servant leadership is different. It becomes the way we think, and therefore it becomes the way we behave. It motivates the things we do. Servant leadership is lived out. It's never spoken about. Like Jesus says, it's like leaders need to get their hands dirty. They need to put skin in the game. That's what they needed. I remember we had a guy come here, Blaine Cook, some years ago, and he spoke on leadership. And one of our young guys asked him a question about business. What must I do to do this, etc., etc. And the first thing that came out of Blaine's mouth was, put skin in the game. If you want to be involved in something that's moving forward and you want to have effect in that place, put skin in the game. If you want to lead like Jesus, Jesus is saying, put skin in the game. Be a servant leader. Because servant leadership is not about a position. It's not about prominence. It's not about promotion. And it's not about power. Servant leadership is different. It's about how we function. It's otherly focused. That's what servant leadership is. And remember, it's what we do that defines us. Now, I don't want you to just think corporate here. I don't want you to think like that. Think of you. Let's think of us as individuals here. I want to live my life, and I want to live my life the way Jesus wants me to live my life. And as a result of that, it's going to work out. It's going to push from the center. Christocentric life. It's going to push out. What's it going to look like? What am I going to be like as a husband? That's a leader. What am I going to look like as a wife? That's a leader. What am I going to look like as a parent? That's a leader. What am I going to be like in the office? That's a leader. Do you get me? What am I going to be like on the rugby ground? Eventually, someone's going to be the leader. What am I going to be? It goes on and on and on. What am I going to do when I start a business? That's a leader. What am I going to do when I've got 5 people and they need direction in their lives? That's a leader. And Jesus is saying, lead like me. Be different. Be a servant leader. Whatever's at the center will push out. And remember, what we do defines us. Not what we say who we are defines us. Jesus never went around saying, I am the great servant leader of the universe, of the intergalactic kingdom of God. I am the apostolic servant leader. Not even written in the book. Never mentioned. The Lamb of God went to be slaughtered. He served his way to the cross. And leading the way Jesus leads is daring to serve. Now let's just flatten the ground. Everyone who breathes can serve. Remember what Brené Brown said? Daring leadership is ultimately about serving others, not ourselves. So what's at the center? I was just thinking the other day, is one of the, maybe the most, I'll ask you this question. What do you think is the most dangerous thing you could dare to feed? Shout it out. What do you think it is? A lion. Got a nice fillet steak, and you go, here, kitty, kitty, kitty. What could be more dangerous than a lion? We were in Australia once, and there was the zookeeper, and he was very buff, and he's standing on top of a very high ladder, and behind him was like a pond with alligators in. And he was telling everybody how he was mates with the alligators, and he was holding a fish or something. And that he had control. And while he was talking, he was up here, this alligator just kept coming up and up and up. And all the cameras were going, forget what he's saying. This is going to go viral. What's the most dangerous thing you could feed? Our ego. Nothing more vicious, more deadly, more dangerous than our ego. More destructive than our ego. And we feed it all day long, and we allow other people to feed it all day long. We can't afford to follow Jesus with our words and not our works. If we're going to dare to lead, then we're going to have to live like Jesus. I'm going to say this now, it's daring to be known out there as a servant leader. Serving leaders push aside pride, starve their ego, wrestle with their arrogance, and deal with their blind spots, all day long, non-stop. Serving leaders don't lord over people, and they don't flaunt themselves in front of people. In other words, serving leaders refuse to say, I know more. I have more. I need more. I am more, and therefore I demand more from you. Serving leaders won't do that. And the Bible challenges us to dare to be different leaders in the church. I think this is the place where it's got to work. It's got to work among us. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? This is where we get to play. This is where we get to exercise our faith and work out our salvation in a safe environment with people who love us and accept us for who we are. I mean, just look around. How many of these people would you invite to your 21st birthday party? Not because they can't dance like you, but we don't really know each other, but we are family. And it's in this family we need to get to know each other so that we can learn to live the life Jesus has called us to live. The longer we don't know each other, the more chance we just keep feeding our ego. And so the Bible challenges the church and the church leaders. Dare to be different leaders. Wherever you are, dare to be different leaders. Listen to what Peter says to the church. He says, 1 Peter 5, he says, shepherd the flock of God among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion, but voluntary, according to the will of God, not for sordid gain, but with eagerness, not lording over those who've been allotted to your charge, but proving to be an example to the flock. Shepherd the flock among you, exercising oversight, but not under compulsion, not forcing people to do things that you want them to do. A shepherd of a church should allow people to discover Jesus for themselves, correct? It's a unique journey, but together we help. No, don't do that. Well, you shouldn't have done that. How many butchers do you know have 5 fingers on both hands? They had to learn the hard way. We don't have to always learn the hard way. If we love each other, we can avoid a lot of unnecessary pain in our lives. But we need to love each other. We need to be a part of an environment where we can serve one another and do things not for gain, but with eagerness and desire and joy. We shouldn't lord over people. If you're going to run a community in this church, we don't ask you to be the king or the captain. We ask you to host and to love the people. In business, don't lord over people because they're talking behind your back. Serve them. They will talk behind your back, but they'll say much nicer things. Dare to be different. The second dare is Jesus, out of Jesus' teaching, he's saying, dare to serve. You see, because that's what servant leaders do. Matthew 23:11 says this, the greatest among you must be a servant, but those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Doesn't even make sense. If you humble yourself, you'll be exalted. And I do think there's a slight distortion on the interpretation of that text. But here's the deal. If we humble ourselves, the Lord lifts us up. He blesses and honors us. We don't need the honor of man. Be a servant. That's the next challenge. I want to read from a research paper done by Adam Foch and Michael Ponton. It was an academic paper they did, identifying primary characteristics for servant leadership. How's that? There are people who do this. And this is what their study resulted in. They did a survey study with academics in all the various realms of academia and scholars. And of the total 12 characteristics that were identified for servant leaders, 5 were agreed upon by every single one of them. Isn't that interesting? So I want to read these out to you. 5 most prominent servant leader characteristics. And I'd like you to listen to them and see if we could apply them to our lives. So the first one, they're saying servant leaders value people. Servant leaders value people for who they are, not just for what they give the organization or you as an individual. Servant leaders are committed first and foremost to people, particularly their followers. That's good research. I think I know someone who wrote about that. But he never mentioned his name too much. His name was Jesus, just in case you didn't know. The second one was humility. Servant leaders do not promote themselves. They put other people first. They are actually humble, not humble as an act. They are actually by nature humble. Have you met those people? They're the best people to be around. They're also awkward because you don't know what to do sometimes. Servant leaders know leadership is not about them. Things are accomplished through others. The first one is valuing people. The second one is humility. The third one, listening. Servant leaders listen respectively and non-judgmentally. They will willingly listen because they truly want to learn from others. And to understand the people they serve, they know they need to listen deeply. Now, you know when you're speaking to somebody and they're not listening, hey, they get that like semi-glazed look. It's like, you know what I mean? My cat gives me that when I scratch her little back. The little eyes, that little screen thing comes over the eyes, like, ugh. But when you're speaking to somebody and they glaze over, it's because they're not listening to your words. They're thinking about what they need to say. A servant leader listens. Because you can ask that person anytime, what did I say? Which Leanne asks me all the time, so hard, eh? I've underlined this, by the way. What did I say? Oh, yeah. And I mastered the skill. I remember 3 key phrases when I'm in a conversation. And I say, oh, Jack jumped over. Okay. On a good day, that was close. It was Jill stepped down. We have to realize that the people we're speaking to are unique human beings, highly valued in the eyes of God, as we are. So give them a moment. Some of the gurus call it be present. And it's very hard. I'll be honest, very hard to listen because there's so much going on. And it's very hard to listen to someone who's distracted because there's so much going on in their head and they notice a whole lot of stuff that's going on around them. Especially the higher you are in an organization, you seem to have what they call vision eyes, but you also have vision ears. You're hearing and seeing all sorts of stuff no one else is seeing. And that can be super irritating because you're going, why didn't they see that? And they just go, no, we are being present. We're listening to you. So listening is the third one. Servant leaders seek first to understand and then to be understood. This discernment enables servant leaders to know when their service is required. Isn't that interesting? This enables servant leaders to know when their service is required. You're a leader. If you're listening, you'll hear when you need to serve. The fourth one, is this all right? The fourth one is trust. Trust. Servant leaders give trust to others. They push trust down. They willingly take risks for people they serve. Servant leaders are trusted because they are authentic and dependable. Oh, I can serve with a servant leader. The fifth one is it's valuing people, humility, listening, trust. The last one is caring. Isn't that interesting? Caring. Servant leaders have people and purpose in their heart. They display a kindness and concern for others. As the term servant leader implies, servant leaders are here to serve and not to be served. So let me just put a little dot there for a moment. When you've got a whole lot of people running around you, calling you sir and ma'am, and wanting to do all sorts of stuff, it's generally all sorts of stuff that you have subliminally put into their heads that if they don't do it, they're going to get fired or they're of no value. So husband, if your wife is doing all sorts of stuff and you're sitting back smoking your cigar and she's doing this and she's serving you, as a servant leader, as a husband, you failed. Wives, if your husband is running around like a puppy dog and doing everything you want him to do for you, you have failed, because servant leaders serve, they are not served. Children, teenagers, if your parents are doing everything for you, like brushing your teeth still, and putting your samis in your bag and making sure you do take your stuff to school, you are developing an unhealthy ego. Because you're the next bunch of leaders and you need to serve. You need to do it all. Are you with me? Servant leaders truly care for the people they serve. I love that. Isn't that good? So here's the third dare. The third dare of Jesus is again from something he said. It's dare to imitate me, he's saying. Copy me. Because he served. He said, serve like me. I'm going to go to John 13, 14 and 17. And Jesus says this. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet. This is one of the few times Jesus mentions this. Few times. Remember the time he said, oh, you call me leader. It's not I, but the Father is the teacher. Remember that? He's always deferring to the Father. But this is an illustration. He's trying to show us something. Because his disciples by now should know who he is, because he's just given them some serious things to transform their lives. And he says, and since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet. So Jesus, amongst his disciples, he strips down to his underrods. He bends his knees. I'm not going to do that, all right? I'm just going to bend my knees, okay? Because it could be a terrifying moment for all of us. He bends his knees, and now he is completely vulnerable. He is lower than everyone else. He's got something else in his hand, and it's not for his own well-being or his protection. It's something for someone else. It's a bowl and a cloth. And then he's going to the most disgusting thing on a human. Toenails. And feet. And he starts washing these feet full of mud, ingrown toenails, warts. You get it? He says this, since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. I'll tell you the truth. Slaves are not greater than their masters, nor is the messenger more important than the one who sends the message. Now that you know these things, I'm not going to repeat myself too many times. Now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them. But what happens if you don't do them? There is a blessing on servant leadership that we haven't really experienced yet. That could change the world around us. So do it like Jesus. That's the next dare. Dilge. D-R-L-J. Dilge. Do it like Jesus. We spoke last week about living like Jesus, living from a place of affirmation, having the attitude of Jesus, having the authority of God, and being authentic. Now let's dare to lead like Jesus. Let's do it like Jesus. Having actions that match our affirmation. There is nothing worse than saying something and doing the opposite. It's saying, I'm loved by God, and people don't experience what that really means out of your life. I have the authority of God, but we never pray for sick people. Or we never break through poverty. Do you understand what I'm saying? I do have the attitude of Jesus, but I need you to serve me. I need this, and we boss people around. If we're going to dare to lead like Jesus, we need to make sure that our actions match our affirmation. Our action matches our authority that we're given. Our actions match our attitude. I'm having a problem saying action. Can you hear that? Action. Our behavior matches our authenticity. Having our right actions is crucial to doing it like Jesus. Jesus did exactly what was in his heart. He was humble, so he behaved humbly. He is kind and love, so he was kind and he loved. Actions follow the heart. Isn't that interesting? Now just go with me. What did Jesus do? He bowed down and he washed feet. If our hearts are God's, our hands will follow suit. Are you with me? Foot washers. Do it like Jesus, foot washers. That's what he's saying. I think Jesus is checking our hearts out here. He's wanting to know, are you really mine? Wash those feet. I'm not saying you've got to go and do that. Jesus said that. You with me? How you get your head around that's your fault, not mine. But what does Jesus actually want us to do here? Because the true story is when we look down and we see people's feet, it's like, what the heck? But maybe God is saying, flip, have you seen the condition of your heart? You're looking at the feet, and God's looking at our hearts. This isn't just an example that Jesus gives us to follow. It's how Jesus led and lived. His surrendered heart was evident in everything he did. He knew, this is interesting, he knew that feet would open up someone's heart. He knew that if he washed their feet, God would clean their hearts. God will offend our minds to reveal our hearts. He will do that. Dilge, imitate him. I got saved in 1976, and I got saved under a bunch of really good pastors. And one of the pastors is a friend of mine called Dave Holmes, who lives in England. And my dad, at that stage of my life, was dying of multiple sclerosis and cancer. So I grew up as a teenager having to serve my family and was in so many ways disconnected to a teenage world. It is what it is, and I wouldn't change anything. But there was a particular moment that changed the way I thought about leadership, and it was when Dave Holmes, Pastor Dave, pitched up every day at my house, and all he did was rub my dad's feet. Do you remember, Mom? Once a week, Dave would come down and rub my dad's feet. My dad wasn't a Jesus follower. No one was a Jesus follower. I don't know if I was a really good witness that time because I used to come home from church and preach hell and fire and brimstone and all that stuff. And that didn't work. But Dave came, and all he did was rub my dad's feet. Other guys used to visit him and try and lead him to Jesus and put oil on him and all sorts of stuff. But Dave just used to come and rub his feet, and little conversations would take place. If Dave didn't do that, my dad would not have found Jesus. I remember walking out of my bedroom, going to a meeting, youth group or church, and my dad said, I gave my life to Jesus. He didn't know how to say it to me, and I didn't know how to receive it from him. Weird. It is what it is. That's not the story. The story is this. Feet reveal hearts. Servant leaders who do it like Jesus reveal their heart. They reveal the heart of God. And that heart of God is irresistible. Because serving is done. Regardless of what it is, do it. Be a serving leader. Kindness is done. So just be kind. Be a kind leader. And if you think, I'm not such a kind leader, suck it back and become a kind leader. Because you have a love deposit in us that enables us and empowers us to be kind. We have no excuses. Inclusivity is done. Everyone is seen. Even their stinky toes, it's seen. Be an inclusive leader. Don't choose your little team. Choose everyone. Jesus did. Acceptance is done. Be a leader who values each person for who they are. Let's be like Jesus. Let's accept people for who they are. That people are different. And they're on their own journey in life until they come to the crossroad of Jesus. They need to be loved like Jesus would love them. Not everyone who met Jesus followed him. But everyone who met Jesus was loved by him. Turning the other cheek is done. Don't take offense. If you've got offense in your heart and unforgiveness in your heart, you're messing up your life. And you're going to mess up your marriage, and you're going to mess up your children, and you're going to mess up your world because that offense is cancerous. Don't do that. Turn the other cheek. Didn't Jesus say that we should do that? You see, we only know the power of the gospel when we apply it in our everyday living. When someone is as mean as a junkyard dog to you, you could be mean. I do that. I'm the worst person. What I have to do is after Leanne's talked me down, I have to talk myself down. And I'm not an aggressive oak at all. I just get like all bent out of shape. If I enter a wrestling match, it would be amongst the dwarves and midgets. That's the type of guy. I'm not one of those powerful guys. I'd choose the little oaks. Are you with me? But what I have to do is when someone offends me, I have to choose, like you, turn the other cheek. Because the moment we do is the moment we feel the power of the gospel at work in our hearts. You will never know unless you do it. You will never know the power of being a serving leader until you serve. Husband, wife, parent, child, group leader, sports leader, whoever you are, you only know the power of the gospel at work when we do it. How we think about ourselves as less or more important than others is evident in how we live our lives out, in how we behave. Be a leader who can say this: I'm my Father's child, and He chose me, and He marked me with His love, and He delights in me because I choose to live like my dad. I choose to lay down my life. I choose to serve. I choose to serve. Even if no one serves, I choose to serve. Amen? Amen. Do you want to stand? I'll pray for you. Let's stand.